Morris, and this is MMT Mondays. Tonight, we tackle the topic of interest rates and how much the Federal Reserve can use them to affect the economy as a whole. You might be surprised once you learn the truth about the Fed's abilities using this tool. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and let's get to it. In this article by Lars, Schall, Randall Wray explains the very limited power the Federal Reserve has to affect economic change. So, to provide a more direct answer, no, the Fed can neither create nor cure recessions and crises. It can determine the overnight interest rate, and it can provide reserves on demand. It can also buy anything for sale simply by crediting reserves, a point Bernanke made in testimony before Congress. We used to think the Fed would never buy bad private assets, but Bernanke changed all of that. I do think Bernanke made mistakes, and he has had to do a lot of learning on the job because he came out of academia with inadequate understanding of monetary operations. Greater competency would have had a marginally better outcome. But really, only appropriate fiscal policy could have led to a quicker recovery. We did not get that. During an episode of Mackerel and Cheese, Warren Mosler shows how the Federal Reserve Chairman has the effect of raising interest rates backwards.
Now, what's happened is, since then, the euro has been relatively strong because negative rates are taxed, which is the last thing we have to talk about before we leave, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So it looks like with John Yarmuth, they've got fiscal policy right. So that battle's been won. And if he knows it, everybody's got to know it because there's a herd mentality over there that I've seen in action many, many, many times. And it's the path of least resistance right now for them for all kinds of reasons. And so that's why they're on it. It's pro-agenda. It's everything else. They're going to be on it. What they've still got backwards is the interest rate thing. And so right now, the idea is if we do get inflation, Powell's going to raise rates. The Fed's just talked about backing off on accommodation and leaving rates low, but quantitative tightening, I guess they call it. They're still looking at that. If and when they understand that raising rates is going to add to inflation, that they're already as deflationary as it goes, except for negative rates, you won't hear that talk anymore. Then they'll be saying, look, if there's inflation, you guys are going to have to make a fiscal adjustment because we're doing all we can here with zero rates. We have a deflationary policy right now. Zero rates are a magnet pulling down on prices. And as long as you guys don't let it get out of hand with your deficit spending, inflation is going to be okay. The prices you're paying, as long as you don't get out of hand with that, with your indexation, as long as you don't cause inflation, we're going to be okay. There's nothing more the Fed can do on that extent. We're already deflation. If we raise rates, it's only going to make it worse. We're not going to do that. That makes no sense. It's just basic income for people who already have money. Why would we do that? So once that understanding is understood, then that gets taken out of the equation. It's out of the debate. It's out of the discussion. And then our work is done on that side. And I look forward to that day sooner rather than later.
Mike Norman explains why the natural interest rate is zero in this video.
You know, you hear a lot of comments about interest rates are artificially low. The fact of the matter is the zero interest rate, the 0% rate, is the natural rate for a country that is a sovereign currency issuing nation where all its liabilities are denominated in its own money. It is the monopolist. It is the issuer of the currency. The currency gets its value from the need of the users to settle tax liabilities in that currency. The country does not have to pay an interest rate on its sovereign money that it can issue without limit. The second reason that the natural rate of interest is zero is because as the government spends, that cash just piles up, those reserves just pile up in the banking system, creating a natural tendency for rates to gravitate towards zero. You know, that's the whole thing. I mean, we've seen this unprecedented expansion in the monetary base, and rates continue to gravitate towards zero. It takes effort to keep a positive rate. that is really artificial. I mean, in order to keep a positive rate, the Treasury and the Fed combined have to work to drain reserves out of the banking system to keep the rate positive, or the Fed or the Treasury has to pay an interest rate. Otherwise, it'll just gravitate to zero. So here's the other thing. Any rate that is not zero, any positive rate, all right, whatever that is, 25 basis points, 50 basis points, 1%, 5%, 10%, any interest rate that is positive is functionally a fiscal expansion, a fiscal support. All right? All else equal. Now, the question is, who does it go to? I mean, when the government pays interest on Treasury securities, I don't know a lot of poor people or even that many, working class people who own lots of treasuries. So, I mean, that is a fiscal support mainly to institutions like banks and financial institutions and wealthy people. But there's, make no mistake about it, that is a fiscal support. It's just channeled to a sector of the economy or a portion of the citizenry that, frankly, I don't think really needs it.
So often, we are told by others that the Federal Reserve has so much control over the economy using monetary policy, but we can see that isn't true. In fact, it is a very limited tool that the media and pundits use to misdirect attention from the body that can exert much more dominance over policy, Congress. If you enjoyed tonight's video, make sure to check us out at realprogressives.org and subscribe to get notifications on new video streams in YouTube, Periscope, Twitch, Facebook, and Rockfin. Thank you and continue learning.